Cool. So we are going to do our exercise first. And in the past, I've had a whole class for the exercise, but that would come after you've already discussed, like done a whole class discussion, like a whole day on discussing your storyboards. And so I think that this way we're crunched on time, so we're putting them together in one day. However, I think it is better to do the exercise first, because then you have some frame of context how you might build stuff as well. So when you're talking to each other, you have a little bit maybe more insight towards like how things might actually go together in a coding kind of format. So I want you guys to do to have two windows open. We're going to need P5 sketch window. So we make a new one. And then we also need to navigate to the project, or sorry, exercise 4 page again. And this time we're going to be doing this part B. Konstantinos, you're still here. Hello. Konstantinos, you're going to take the class again? Nope. He decided, I'm done with this shit. Getting the hell out of here. No, he was just lingering, I think, after his meeting. Oh. Man, I am tired today. How's everybody else doing? How are you guys doing? Got a thumbs up. Got a head bob. Couple thumbs down. Ooh, shit.
I'm
Dante,
so
what's going on with thumbs down there, guy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think you're in the other lab, right?
Yeah, I'm just burnt out. I'm ready for everything to end and I can do nothing.
You would be like 6 feet under. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to give it like 70 years though, man. You know? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, we're recording. Got to be professional. So today, first thing I want you guys to do is download, there's a zip file and a text file. Yes, I know I could have combined them, but when I first put this up, I wasn't very intelligent. So I just want to go ahead and grab both of those, or I already did, so I guess I don't need to do it twice. And I'm aware that I also could have just shared with you guys the, you know, like an intro sketch, right? I could just share with you the link of like the current sketch as is, and we could start there. However, you guys don't learn anything that way. So we're going to walk through this process again. And so hopefully you guys have something you're taking notes on, whatever way you like, either on paper or taking notes in the sketch window. So as we go along and things are like, oh, now I get it, right? Like as you learn things, you should be taking notes. So when you open this up, the assets folder, you should see there's 20 different things, images and audio. So kind of similar to last class, we do have two forms of audio file extension types, right? Different formats. And then we have a bunch of images. So some of the images are backgrounds, right? But you'll notice even some of them, like they have just different overlays. You see this? I'm just going to different images up and down. And so it's like the same, what I did is in Photoshop, I have all my layers and I just turn on whatever on and whatever off, right? And I export whatever it is that I'm wanting to export. And I save all of that content in a Photoshop file. And then if I want to make adjustments, I want to add something, remove something, you have access to all of it, right? So that's kind of like the format I went with this one. But then I also did, for the home menu, I also made little arrows that will kind of go inside of this little breakout. So there's like a variety of different ways, right? You could build everything on a background and load just different backgrounds. As like a hover, right? It's kind of like tricking your eye to thinking, oh, it's just this that updated. No, it's the entire image. So there's a variety of different ways that I'm constructing visuals for you guys to get that experience of like what you might attempt. But anyway, so then we want to go back, we want to open up that audio file and copy everything. So I'm going to do Command A, copy. And then we're going to get rid of the default text in a new P5 sketch and paste in our new stuff. And then before we do anything else, let's go ahead and change the name of this. Right? Exercise 4B. And I'm going to say, okay. So rename it, and then we actually have to do a formal save. Right now it's saved. Just naming it, I don't believe it actually saves. So don't get in that habit. All right, so now we have all this stuff here. So let's go ahead and play it and see what happens. Anybody get anything? It's a trolling question. Nobody's going to get anything. Is everybody up to par? Everybody's here? Okay. Yeah, biggest thing is I want, if anybody gets stuck, you start to fall behind, let me know. Either in the private chat or something. You know, whatever it takes, everybody should be on like kind of the same page this whole class. So we get some errors down here. And we just have to read it. It looks like there was a problem loading your image. Okay. Looks like there's a problem loading your image, loading your image, loading your image. Right? So probably should go ahead and go and look and see where we're loading our images, because it looks like there's a problem. And here's our images. Not quite sure what that means though. And I know you guys are just new to images, so you might, it's, you know, trying to say check the path, right? Try checking the path file. Oh, okay, let's check the path. Let's see if we have like the wrong name or something, right? So where is our assets folder?
We didn't make one.
That is correct. We just copied and pasted some crap. Let's go ahead and make a sketch folder or a assets folder. So create folder, assets. Okay, so we have our assets folder, And as you can see, if we click the drop down back and forth, there's nothing inside of it. So this is your next step. And I actually messed up on this last class, the first time anybody's ever done that. Nobody's ever mentioned that to me. But if you accidentally click on this drop down again to do your uploads, that's actually wrong. You want to use the assets drop down because we want to upload the files into that assets folder. And if you do this the wrong way, then like apparently you can't even drag and drop. Like I tried that, it doesn't work. You have to like delete every file or whatever. So upload files. My recommendation might be to do like half of them at a time. Like first 10. You know, like, oh, here's 10. And I can see that it's 10. So after I upload the 10, I should see, you know, 10 of them on the left. And then after that, I might want to wait a few seconds just to make sure there isn't something still like uploading that shouldn't be uploading, you know? Okay, and then do the other half. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but the logic here is that if you're getting an error, it could be relating to like the files didn't get to upload the whole way. Oops, do the assets folder again to upload. All right. So now if we hit play, still getting an error. P5 had problems creating the global function lights, possibly because your code is already using that name as a variable. You may want to rename your variable to something else. What does that mean? Pretend I'm not here and you're trying to solve this. There's no office hours. You gotta figure out what's going on, what's wrong. You're all gonna have to do this like dozens of times, mind you, so. It's more or less telling us exactly what's going on. I just want somebody to see if they have like a different way of framing it. So we're going to cover the next one here in a second. So it's saying lights, the global function lights. Well, because your code is using that name as a variable, yeah, we're using that as a variable. But I guess there's a global function called lights. Well, this isn't a global function, this is a global variable. So apparently P5 uses something called lights as a global function, kind of like, you know, function draw, but it would be function lights, I guess, maybe. or it could just be, so even here, look at, if we look down where we're trying to preload lights, it comes up as a function call, just like create canvas is blue or background is blue. Lights is coming up as blue, right? Whereas everything else is coming up as white. So quite literally, the word lights is a reserved term that we cannot have access to because P5 already uses it. So we have to have a new name. And so I already took the liberty of using a new name. This is the name of the character. So Jack Skellington, you could use whatever you want. But the logic here is that we would replace the variable name from lights to this new name. And then also right there where we are trying to load it. The actual image name, like in the assets folder, that doesn't have to change. Doesn't matter at all. What matters is like what P5 is using. All right. So that should take care of that problem. So we shouldn't get that error here anymore, which we do not. However, now we don't have anything loading still, and we're not getting anything in the console. So from that point, we need to open up the dev tools. And I just found out last class that I don't think that you can actually open dev tools anymore on Safari. Is anybody using Safari? Are you able to open up the dev tools, Dante? Because I went on online and Google this, and it said you had to go into like Safari preferences and go to additional settings, and then turn on the dev tools menu option, and then from there go to like.
What are the dev tools?
That's what I have open right now. So I think essentially you're going to have to use Chrome.
Gotcha.
So why don't I go ahead and save this, let you open Chrome. You got to go to P5 on, the Chrome, and then sign in. And after you have signed in, you can go ahead and use my link here. Which will be everything loaded already, right? But then once that's opened, once you're signed in, and once you've opened My Sketch, you'll want to go ahead and save, change the name, and then do a fresh save. So you actually have it instead of just me. So the dev tools, again, which is on Chrome and Firefox for sure, you can access, should be in like a little menu button in the top right somewhere. And I think on Firefox, it just says like dev tools right there, but you have to, for Chrome, you have to go to more tools, and then there's dev tools, right? And so in the dev tools, we don't want elements, we want the console. And just to make it easy, sometimes you might want to like clear the console first and do a fresh run, just to make sure you're only seeing like the current errors. So we're getting this problem here that's saying, we're getting a red, like cannot get some assets from JRMU or door open. What does that mean?
They're not in our project, in our assets folder.
What's that?
The files that they're like the audio files or the the audio files aren't in the project.
Yeah, and more specifically, the stuff we have in preload. Oops, right here. We're calling our own variable names that we've made for this exercise, but only the top one I renamed. The rest are still from the first exercise. So actually what I did is I copied, the whole block of code from the previous exercise. I pasted it in here. My intention was to swap everything. So I don't have to retype everything, right? Like why retype everything from hand? Just copy it. Well, this might be why, right? Like you miss something. So we're not always going to have the console to tell us what the problem is. Sometimes we're going to have to rely on the dev tools console. And it doesn't firmly tell you what's going on. It just kind of points you to like where the problem might be arising in. So it's then up to you to go in here and say, oh, ET song is loading from JRMU, JRMU-EM or whatever the hell this is. And we go in here, oh, it's not here. Oh, it's not what I want. So all of these just need to be the same name as what the variable is. So you can just like copy and paste them over if you want. So we still want the assets actually, the assets prefix. Okay, and then so if we go to play that again, we get something pop up. Perfect. And so mine's muted, but yes, you should have this elevator music playing in the background now. Making sense? Solving problems? I really want a Snickers bar right now. I don't know why.
So does it not matter if we include the file extension when we're calling an item from the assets? Because some of them have the extension, some of them don't.
For the audio here, yeah, it doesn't. You don't have to because we have this. We're declaring the asset subcategory.
Gotcha.
I wonder if there's one for image formats. Oops. No, at least not from that call. Yeah, so we have a background being called. Looks like, right? Yep, boom, in draw, we have a background. And we were looping the audio in setup. Why don't we loop the audio in draw? Why don't you guys go ahead and cut the elevator loop out of setup and paste it in draw and play. What happens?
My ears hurt.
Just looping, right? it's starting to try to play the file from the very first, 60th of a second over and over. So that's what's happening. It's trying to loop itself over and over. So this conundrum, this is a very important thing to realize, is that audio is a different format than images. And so images we can call and repeat, and we're using them on the canvas. Audio is this different context. So if we want to have something in audio play or loop, we can't put them in draw. We have to have some other thing happen so that we're not looping an audio loop or an audio play. So that's why I had it originally in setup, which you should go back to having, because setup only happens one time. We're triggering, hey, loop the background audio. And then from the very beginning, that's what we're going to hear, right? And at some point later, we could tell it to stop. That's no problem. It's just a quick way for us to get it to come on as soon as we open it up, right? So hopefully we're there. We're going to step 5, copying some new variables. We can paste these up top. I do have a category here for just plain variables, right? Instead of like audio or images. So we got to put those right there. And then we have a bunch of new code from step 6. And we want to delete the original background being drawn, which is here in draw, and then replace that with this copied code. Right. And then I'm also going to do a Shift Command F. Do a little tweak on the one thing there. All right, and then let's play and see what's going on. Right, get some shapes going on, right? And I want to break down kind of what we're doing here. So the first thing we want to really acknowledge is that all of this content we just pasted in is nested inside of a condition. If scene is 0, right? And so a condition, as we want to recap here, is really checking to see if something, something against something else. We're trying to do some kind of operation here. And in this case, we're putting 2 equal signs, which is standing for that we're not going to change the value of scene to something else. 2 equal signs is checking the value. So is the value of scene 0? Right? So a conditional does this kind of operation. It determines if this statement is true or false. If the statement is true, in which this case our scene is 0 from default, then we will execute everything in between the brackets, which is now the background, pausing other stuff, which we'll get to momentarily. And then this whole kind of section on push pop. Push pop, just for your knowledge right now, is kind of like an aside, like a segue for some code. So I would like to just show you what happens if we turn that off, but everything still works fine. So I'm not sure exactly how to detail that out for me for right now, but we'll get into that later. Biggest thing here is that if we go to like translate, which is moving the origin point, right? So if we comment that out, we can see that now these shapes will be moving at the top left up here, right? That's the origin natively. So translate allows you to move the origin point to somewhere new. And then rotate is allowing you to rotate around the origin point. So yeah, we could have specified these shapes further out from the corner at the original origin, but they would still be rotating around that origin of the top left if we wanted to rotate. So by moving them out and having them rotate around the middle, that allows that to work a little bit more correctly. I guess maybe one thing I could show you is like just drawing a rectangle outside of this. We'll just say it's like 100, 100, 100, 100. Right. So that's a normal rectangle outside of push pop. But if we put that inside of push pop, what happens? Right? It's now included within the push pop, meaning it's getting the translation, it's getting the rotate, it's getting the fill, right? All of these parameters are only softly applied to P5 for whatever's inside the push pop, which is in this case, these two rectangles. And I can delete my new one that I just added. Right? So push pop can be helpful. And by having in this exercise, you have it now for notes, right? And you can go back and reference it later. Look at the examples online on the P5 website and such. But yeah, it's helpful for some niche kind of things. Okay. And again, call me out if you have some questions. All right, so let's get those activated a little bit. Down in step 8, we're going to take all of this code here and we're going to paste it inside of draw, but above scene 0. It's right here. Did a shift command F to tidy the code up, and we can go ahead and play this and see what's happening now. And we should see that these are now pulsating. Right? Pulsating. Let's do my little so what is going on? This is something that we already covered in last class. This is a very small kind of micro demo of something, like showing you an example of how you can pair together variables in conditionals, right? These are both things you can make up on your own. You just make them up. They just come out of nothing. So in this case, we already have, well, I guess the part to look at first is the shapes, right? Look at the shapes, because the shapes are what we see. And if we look at those shapes from the previous step, we can see that they're not just numbers, but they're also being affected by this thing called grow, right? This variable. And we did have a variable declared up at top called grow, so that makes sense. but originally it was just 0. So originally this grow value was just 0. However, now we have some math happening, and this is changing the value of that variable, right? So all of this is basically set up to allow that grow to move, which then allows the shapes to move, right? And to understand what's going on, we just have to read through it. So the first thing we have is an if conditional that starts with resize. What is resize? It's just a variable I made up, right? It's named, I named it something like scene or like grow. I named it something logical, right? It's something, it's a parameter that we want something to grow. I could have called it like, you know, well, not just grow, but this is also going to shrink. So I guess the bigger question is like, well, grow is not always growing, grow is sometimes shrinking. So that could have been called like grow, shrink, you know, or something. But anyway, if resize is equal to the value of 0, right, then we're going to execute everything. If that's true, we're going to execute everything here inside. And the first thing we have is this one line, but then we have a nested conditional. We have a conditional inside a conditional. If we can go ahead and add something like telling grow to change the value of itself, right? Because this is happening 60 times a second. Grow is just adding 1 to itself every time, which is changing the scale of the shapes. But then if grow is 100, we're changing the value of resize. This is code just like this is code. There's no reason why we can't nest it inside of itself. We could actually just keep going in here and putting more and more code inside. Like, you know, and it would just keep tabbing over. And this is all doing the same thing. So like it would actually run fine and just do the same thing. So when if resize, if grow gets to 100, right, after basically 100 frames, which is what, less than 2 seconds, then resize is going to be set to a new value of 1. Well, that means that this conditional is now false. So resize is not equal to 1, right? It's like a Boolean, right? A true or false, yes or no, but we're using a variable instead. Is resize 0? No. Okay, then don't do any of this. Well, this next one, is resize 1? Yes. Now we're going to shrink grow. And once grow reaches 0, we're going to switch resize back to 0, which means we're flipping it again. It's just this teeter-totter, right? So like this egg timer, we're flipping back and forth. Anybody have questions? I really want everybody to understand this. So if you don't understand this, it's probably good to throw something in the chat or shout out. Because I've taught this class a lot, and it's like, I'll go through this and everybody's like, yeah. And then like 2 weeks later, I'll be checking in with somebody And they'll be like, oh, I haven't started my project because I don't know how to code. It's like, well, what do you mean? You didn't ask any questions. So yeah, I think it's important. So as we're going along, really question like, do I understand what's going on here? You know, like, yeah, oh, grow is doing this. Well, what is grow? Why does grow matter? That's a good question, right? I made it up. Why'd you make it up? Because I wanted something to grow. Okay, continuing. Second scene time. We're on step 10. We're going to copy all of this. It's pretty lengthy. And we're going to paste this below draw. So after draw ends, which I've conveniently labeled for you guys, we're going to go ahead and return a few lines and paste that in. I'm going to do a tidy up. And then we're going to have a nice time figuring out why I'm getting an error. Oh, that's why. Wait a second. I'm going to refresh this page. Ha, I already fixed the error. I didn't refresh the page. That's what I was doing before class. There we go. Shift Command Tab. Nice and tidy. Boom. Nice. So it still runs, no problems. So this is probably the only other condition, function, right? This is a new function. This could very well serve most of you as being like the only other function you need other than setup and draw. Or something similar like key pressed, void key, you know, function key pressed. So if we have primarily just key presses and mouse coordinates for your interactions, this will serve like the only kind of example you'll need. So just like setup and draw, P5 knows what this is by default. And it's basically just triggering to see, was your mouse pressed? So kind of like a conditional, is it pressed? Yes or no. If it is, then we're going to execute everything inside of it. However, just like the example we just covered, conveniently, right? We have nested in here conditionals. So the first one's scene 0. All right, well, the first time we open this up is scene 0. Yes. So if we continue on then, because if that's true, we're going to do everything inside of this, right? On that mouse pressed. So if your mouse is pressed and the scene is 0, it's going to go through and check this bit of code. The 2 bits here are 2 more conditions. One is if your mouse X is greater than 14, which is approximately here, right? 14 pixels over. And if your mouse X is less than 95 pixels, which is about here, and mouse Y is greater than, mouse Y is less than. This is setting the parameters for this first button as a square, not as a circle, but as a square. Whereas this second condition is the right arrow. And if I click that left arrow, right, if our mouse is in those coordinates and we're in scene 0 and we have clicked, then we're going to play a new audio track and our scene is going to change from 0 to 1. So if you've already replayed this, right, with this bit of code, we click there, you should hear new audio. However, we still hear the old audio, right? That's one thing that's going wrong. We don't get any new background or anything. So that's the second thing. And third thing is that we can notice here, our shapes have stopped moving. Right? That's the three things that we could decipher from clicking on that left button. Well, what we need to do is follow in a logical order and get a sense that, well, we did click to make this happen. Our scene was in 0 when we made this happen. And we were in this location when we made it happen. So therefore, this seems like it definitely did execute. Because we did get number 1, the audio change. But the other ones are pretty vague. And we stopped seeing scene 1 move because if we look up, or sorry, we stopped seeing scene 0 move because under draw now, if we go back up to look under draw, you'll see that we have an if scene condition for 0, but we don't have any if scenes 1. So as soon as we're changing the scene value from 0 to 1, we stop drawing this, but because we didn't draw anything new, we're just seeing the last known thing drawn to the canvas. That's why it looks like we never left scene 1. But if we were to actually print scene, right, like into the console, we would see that we are in scene 1. So what we need is to do something for scene 1 inside of draw. So that's the next bit of code, which is step 12. And we want to logically paste this under scene 0, but still within the draw, right? So it's important to kind of, well, let's paste this first and then we'll talk about it. And it actually probably would be beneficial to put a couple of lines in between these so that you can visualize them being separated. Right? And then if you play it, let's run through it first. If you play it, you go to the next, you click the left button. We'll go there. We get the new image because we are drawing a new image now if scene is 1, right? We knew that as soon as we click that, our value of scene has changed to 1. However, we're only drawing the background. So we still hear the old audio. We never told the old audio to stop. And that's why I put these here and notated them out so that you can see like, well, now if we were to remove those so that we would pause the audio upon entering scene 1 in draw. Once you do click on that left arrow now, you should just hear the 1 background track. So we should be getting a general sense of like how we are building up from nothing, right? We're we got like, how do we make one image come up? Well, it looks like we can just use this call background like we've been doing with colors, but instead of, like before we were saying, oh, like 255, 00, and like, oh, okay, that's just red. Well, no, now we have this ability to just call an image because we loaded an image. We've named a variable called that image. So now we can draw that image. However, one caveat I want you guys to note here, and this might be something worth putting as a note, literally. Maybe you can put that right here, even up at the top, line 20. You could put a note that's saying anything used as a background image, right, must be the same dimensions as my canvas. If I were to change this canvas size to 999 instead of 1,000 and hit play, it actually works. Wow. Let's change this to 100 by 600. So I guess my note there that I just told you guys is kind of wrong. What's really funny though, is that they actually changed this since last semester. That's how frequently code gets updated, like features and things. This has been a thing all the way since back in processing. Like your image has to be the same exact dimensions as your canvas if you're using it as a background call. We're going to go through another way of calling images too, just so you guys have that reference. But I want to get back to this general notion. And this is something, is everybody caught up, by the way? Anybody stuck? I really honestly hope a lot of you could be stuck so we can cover any problems.
What was the note again that you told us to write in the images? Just play that back really quickly.
Oh, this is kind of irrelevant now because I just realized that your image does not need to be the exact same dimensions as the canvas.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. It's an antiquated note. So if you wanted to time travel back to last semester, then I could cover it in more detail. This is how we learn. We keep doing things. Hey, Dante, look how fancy I am over here. Are you jealous? He's pretty jealous.
Takes a lot not to drink or eat anything on campus while I'm here.
Hey, man, this is my own office for today.
Perks of being at home.
Yeah,
I wish I was at home.
me too. I'm tired today. Oh, it looks like some people came in late, so kudos for me for acknowledging that, because the rest of you would have been absent for today because nobody said anything. Okay. Oh, getting back to it. So the big thing I want you guys to take away is this notion that we're using a variable called scenes that we made up out of thin air as a form of organization specifically. So we had this issue where we want to get around from one area to another area. There's a variety of ways we can do that. However, this way seems to be pretty self-explanatory. But then once you go to try to do it on your own, a lot of people end up kind of losing track of like how the system's working. And I want to just make sure that you're all grasping this. So we not only have these if conditions inside of draw, right? Because these are the things that we nest in here that we actually see on the canvas. What is drawing to the canvas, right? That stuff has to go in draw. So we have this if condition for the scene in draw, and I label it as menu, right? However, we also have this if condition for scene typed the exact same way inside of mouse pressed. So there's two spots where it must go. There is another way to do mouse presses in the draw loop, which I think we might cover one here in a minute, if I remember correctly. However, I have them separated for the sake of like a little bit better organization, kind of breaks the two apart. So you have everything you're drawing kind of looping up here, and then down at the bottom, we have things we're clicking and what things happen when we're clicking. And both of those are taking advantage of this new variable that we made called scenes, called scene. And we're taking advantage of it by just calling on it in a conditional statement. Like all these different factors can change, but the fact that we have them nested inside of something, right? This notion of nesting conditions in conditions is the way in which we're able to kind of switch between different things. So after scene 0, inside of mouse breast, we should also now see that we have scene 1 already there, and we already have scene 2 there, and those things are already set up, and we're also changing the scene, and we're also playing audio, right? So each one of those different spots. So if we click on one, we have a new location for a new button. We can click on that new button. That should bring you back, right? More buttons. So we're up to line 15. We have some more code. And this is going inside the mouse pressed scene 1. So not inside of scene 1 for draw, but scene 1 down here in mouse pressed. Looks like we just need it inside of that. So not specifically in any of the sub kind of nested conditions. Do a Shift Command F and hit play. And so now nothing like a dated movie, you know? Got to have some dated movies once in a while. So you'll note that, you know, it doesn't need to be, we don't need to be changing any variables here like scene. Or we could change a multitude of different things with the click, right? We could put as many things here as we want. And just keep putting list more and more things that happen on a clip. You know, like, oh, you found a key and now the key value changes because you clicked it. Or you're clicking and killing enemies and you got to kill 10 enemies to continue. So you add 1 to the enemy kill count, whatever it is. So you'll notice though too, if we click on that and keep clicking, right? And so what happens if we keep clicking? Get a nice nice little echo effect going on. So you kind of have to walk yourself through the logic, like, well, why is it continuing to play if I'm clicking it a second time? Did you ever stop it from playing before it played the second time? Right? It only does what it tells you're telling it to do. So if you want it to only play one time at a time, like once at a time, you would have to first stop the audio before you're playing the audio, which would stop any previous clicks, right? Kinds of like very simple things you might not think about as you start your code off, right? But as you keep working and you're kind of smoothing it out and getting it ready for like final submission kind of thing, it's like, well, how do I make these things more user friendly? So it's, you know, you don't want somebody clicking on it a million times just for an effect, right? Maybe you do, but if that's the case, you probably wouldn't be looking at a very well organized piece, right? It'd be much more abstract, I would assume. So there's another one here. This is going in the mouse pressed for scene 2. And same thing. It's for scene 2. So click on his head. However, we'll notice that like we don't get any indicator, right? That we can click on his head to get audio to be played. So it's kind of like really weird. We don't get any indicators that we can click on these buttons. I mean, we just kind of assume because they're there, but like, you know, having like a rollover might be a little bit more beneficial, right? And so that's kind of like what the next stages go into, is expanding that a little bit. So I want you guys to kind of walk through some of this here yourself. See if you can finish this expanded notion here on your own. Kind of go off key here. Nice.
I'm getting flashbacks to when I used to work at the movie theater.
Nice. Why isn't this open? I thought they were supposed to open.
It could be even though state has it open, Regal hasn't allocated films to those theaters yet.
I deleted the app even. I was really excited one time. I might have mentioned this. I don't know about it was, if it was this class or not. I had went to a IMAX theater in Toronto, and I went there because they had claimed to offer laser projections, a laser projection system. So I've never experienced that before, and at the time it was new, and at the time there was like less than a dozen of them in the world, I think, if I remember correctly. And so I'm like, holy crap, I want to go check this out. And so I went and watched Star Wars. I can't remember which one even. But the glasses, so it was also a 3D laser projection. So there was two laser projectors. And because they were laser projectors, they used a different type of lenses. I believe they were active shutter lenses in the theater. So it was pretty weird to have somebody like as a valet, like taking them and handing them out. It was also the first theater I've ever experienced. It may have been Dolby Atmos, but it also may have been like, before Dolby Atmos, but it was the first theater that had speakers in the ceiling. So it was supposed to be like more immersive. But anyway, before I went and watched the movie, I went and talked to a random employee. I was asking like, hey, I'm interested in the laser projection system. Is there anybody that can show me? And somebody pointed me to this one random younger guy. And I went up to him like, hey, yeah, I'm here from, Buffalo. I'm doing research in this area. I'm interested if I could see the projection system. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm about to go up there in a few minutes. So I'm talking to him, and then like his boss comes over, like, what are you doing standing here talking? He's like, oh, this guy's gonna, he's from Buffalo. I'm gonna show him the projection system. And he's like, no, you're not. What do you mean? You can't show anybody that. Nobody's allowed to go up there. I'm like, fuck. Why'd you have to come over here right now? So I was about to be pretty excited, but then got shut down. Not that it's anything super fancy. Like you can kind of see in there from the back anyway, but
It's nothing fancy up there, honestly. It's just a very dark hallway with a bunch of boxes that are.
no, I know. It was just gonna be sweet to see like this new technology, but anyway.
I mean, realistically, it probably looked the same because they all go into the same like cage unit thing.
Yeah.
So you probably wouldn't have even noticed a difference. Probably just in the external control screen you would notice.
Anybody successful yet in getting 17, step 17 done? Or even on past that, 18?
I have a question for 17B.
Yep.
So do you want us to have the finger light up when we hover over it or when we press it? It's kind of not that, it's not clear, like,
Hover, just based on mouse location.
okay, all right.
You could even copy the location of the light finger under mouse pressed because we already used those coordinates. Everybody get this? Oh, I messed up on a step, I think. Anywhere below the background. Right. So if done correctly, you should have hover on all three of these. This completes step 17. I mean, I'd be willing to kind of guess that. How many? There's 16 people in here. Be kind of willing to guess maybe 5 of you don't know how to do it or not trying it right now. I'm gauging that on past experience of people telling me they didn't do it. So the one thing I haven't talked to you guys about yet, and this is something I can get into later, that some people might use it, some people might not. So under this background, or under the scene one, see how we have, I had you guys paste this if mouse is in a location for a rollover, else if location is in this location, rollover is a different background. We could actually chain together that with this other background. Do another else if for the mouse on the finger, and that all works fine then. However, the last thing we could do is like something kind of interesting. Let's go to P5, search reference, search for cursor, cursor types, arrow crossed hand. Let's use hand maybe. So if you chain things together with an else if, like if, else if, you can end that with an else. And this is like if your mouse cursor is anywhere other than the three before that, any of the ifs before that. So then you could do anything you want. And in this case, I'm going to say I want a hand for the cursor. Right? It's always a hand, huh? So now it's not a hand. A little perplexed actually. Because we don't have a hand. Now we have one, which is what we're supposed to. But then here we shouldn't.
I think you have to set the cursor back to the other thing, like, because it's just always defaulting to else. So if you put it
It's not always defaulting to else.
right, because isn't it always in scene one? It should always be a hand, because
No, I
if
think
it's not meeting it,
what has to happen is I just have to set it back to something else. So kind of like changing the fill color of something. So if I put this in next to like these other backgrounds, right? This will also save me because one of the backgrounds is also where I'm changing scenes. So if I go to another scene, I won't have the problem. Right? And that means it's anywhere except on the areas that you already predefined. So this kind of like is super subliminal, but it also is like, it kind of makes it, you know, that much cleaner. Now, I almost want it to be the opposite way though. Like if all these are hand. Let's switch that, do the old switcheroo. And then I'm sure I'd have to put it in other places too, actually, but yeah, that doesn't that feel kind of like natural? Like having it go to a like you're gonna click on it. Like you don't even think about it.
Wait, can you go back how you did it?
Yeah. So originally, I just had you guys paste this else if, right, with this menu, and then you had, or sorry, if, and then an else if with the second background, right, for like each of the cursors. What do you call them? Menu next buttons, right? You guys pasted those two, and then I mentioned, well, that ability to change things with an else. You could follow that up with the background because the background was down here anyway. Like, right, like if we're not in these areas, then it's just going to default to the background, right? However, or wait, no, not plain background. The other thing we had down here was the touch right here. So the logic would be, well, if we only want a cursor to have a different pointer on hovering on something, then everything else, right? We want it to be something else. So that's literally why we can use this follow up with else. And usually it's chained together with ifs. So like if, else if, and then else. And so then I chained together this other else for the ET touch that was already there. And then I just added this last bit. Like this wasn't here at all. So I added else and then a cursor. And then I just had to troubleshoot and add cursors the other ones. So, I mean, it's just another thing. I just thought I'd talk about the else if for a second. We did get a bit past time. You guys still have about 15 minutes. I'm going to throw you guys in groups to chat about your concepts. And now that I'll be here, I'm not going to walk around. I can pop in and kind of listen to some chats. Make sure you save what you were working on so that sticks inside of your documents. You can go back and check later.